We've all had those moments with AI, right? Where it writes something that feels personal, or you have a conversation that just feels real. But what is actually going on inside that black box? Is it all just a super sophisticated illusion? Or are we witnessing the very first sparks of genuine understanding? That's the big question we're diving into today. It's such a paradox, because on one hand, the performance of models like ChatGPT is just stunning. I mean, they seem to get nuance and context in this way that's almost human. But then, on the other hand, they can make these simple, just baffling mistakes that show a complete lack of basic common sense. So what's the deal? Are we dealing with brilliant parrots, or is this something else entirely? And this right here is what we call the understanding paradox. An AI can whip up a poem about autumn leaves that's full of creative flair, but then turn around and confidently tell you that 220 is less than 200. Now, that's not just some random glitch. It's a huge clue that points to how these systems fundamentally think. Okay, so let's start with the skeptics' side of the argument. This view says that large language models, or LLMs, don't actually understand a single thing. They're just incredibly good prediction machines. They've been trained on basically the entire internet to get really, really good at guessing the next most likely word in any given sentence. This quote from Digix Valley nails the skeptical argument perfectly. Think of AI as a high-tech remix artist. It doesn't have original thoughts. It's just an expert at finding patterns in all the stuff we humans have created and then reassembling it in new and, pretty convincing ways. So how does it do this? Well, the secret sauce is something called statistical correlation. At its core, an LLM has learned from trillions of examples that certain words tend to follow other words. So when you type "the sky is," its training data screams that blue is the most probable next word. It's not looking out a window and seeing a blue sky. It's just calculating the odds based on every book, article, and website it's ever read. And if you follow this logic, it leads to some pretty big limitations. Right? Without a real model of the world, AI has no real common sense. It can't be truly original because it's just remixing patterns. And maybe most importantly, it's prone to what we call hallucinations, where it just confidently makes stuff up because its main goal isn't to be truthful, it's just to be plausible. But the story doesn't end there, not by a long shot. Just when that parrot theory seemed to explain everything, researchers started noticing something unexpected. Under just the right conditions, these models began to show these little glimmers of what looked a lot like actual reasoning. This is where it gets really fascinating. So look at the left. A standard prompt gets the right answer, 11, but we have no idea how it got there. But on the right, researchers tried something called chain of thought prompting. Just by asking the AI to think step by step, its ability to solve really complex multi-step problems just skyrocketed. It's not just spitting out an answer, it's actually showing its work. And it turns out this one simple phrase, "let's think step by step," was like a magic key. It seems to unlock a totally different mode of operation in the model. It forces it to stop just predicting the final answer and instead to actually spell out the logical steps to get there. It suggests there's this hidden reasoning ability just waiting for the right prompt. And the results? They're pretty incredible. Check out this benchmark for grade school math problems. When a model was taught to generate its own step-by-step reasoning, its performance didn't just get a little better, it soared. So it seems that as these models get bigger, they're not just getting better at memorizing things, they might actually be getting better at thinking. This whole idea of a model generating its own training data, well, it opens up a wild new frontier. What if AI could go beyond just learning from human text and start to bootstrap its own intelligence? To get a sense of the scale we're talking about, look at this number, 1.4 trillion. That's how many tokens, think of them as pieces of words, were used to train just one model. These things have an absolutely insatiable appetite for data, and that, my friends, leads to a massive problem. That is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? We are actually getting pretty close to the limit of all the high-quality text data that exists in the world. So if AI needs more data to get smarter, but we're running out of data, how can it possibly keep improving? Well, the answer might be a process with a mouthful of a name: reinforcement learning from AI feedback, or RLAF. Here's the simple version. Imagine one AI writes a response. Then, a second AI acts like a coach, critiquing that response based on a set of rules written by humans. The first AI then learns from that feedback and tries again. It's a cycle of self-improvement powered by AI itself. And guess what? It actually works. Research on what's called autonomous learning shows that a model's accuracy just keeps climbing as it trains on its own self-generated data. It's like the AI is creating its own personalized study guide, which could be the perfect solution to the data shortage problem.
So, where does all this leave us? We've got models that are clearly more than just parrots, but they're also definitely not human. They can reason, they can teach themselves. It forces us to ask a really fundamental question. What kind of intelligence are we actually building here?
I love this quote from a recent academic paper. It just perfectly captures the weirdness and the wonder of this moment. We're not just building better calculators, you know? We might actually be creating exotic, mind-like entities, something that qualifies as a new kind of mind, with its own rules and its own unique way of seeing the world.
Maybe the best way to frame it is to think of it as a kind of alien intelligence. It doesn't understand love or gravity by experiencing them like we do. It understands by mapping out the relationships between trillions of words and ideas in this gigantic statistical web that is just completely beyond what a human mind can comprehend. It's not better, it's not worse, it's just different. So, in the end, the debate isn't really just about whether AI can think like a human. I think the deeper, more profound question is, what happens when we start collaborating with an intelligence that works on completely different principles? What kinds of new worlds will it help us discover? And what kind of new problems will we face when we can no longer intuitively understand how it thinks? That is the challenge and the promise we're all just beginning to explore.